We are going to begin a little bit of a transition in our focus. And as much as we've talked about the stress response, we also want to talk about what to do to support each other and our communities um, to balance out the impacts of chronic stress. And there are many ways to approach this. We've already discussed a few of them.
Є багато різних шляхів, щоб це зробити. Ми вже з вами розмовляли про деякі. Мгм.
Today, we want to focus specifically on one model. And this construct is coming from Harvard University's medical school, where there's a program called the Harvard Program in Refugee Trauma. And we have introduced pieces of this model over time in different trainings we've done. However, we realized that we've never taken time to explicitly describe the model. And it makes sense for us to take time to do this for two reasons. First, because, again, it is a relevant response to chronic stress. But second, this model is one that has been influencing all of the different trainings that we have done. In fact, it was through the Harvard Program in Refugee Trauma that three of us met, myself, Trish, and Colleen. So we'll take time today to share with you all of the pieces, even the little pieces that we have shared before. And the information itself is something that we hope is useful. But we also want to use this as a step towards a project that we can plan together in future weeks. So I've pretty much explained the objectives for today already. To begin, as always, we invite you to take a moment, take a breath, and check in with yourself. And whatever number feels right to you today, we simply acknowledge that and welcome you here. So first, some background on this program. As we mentioned, it's a program that's affiliated with Harvard University and Massachusetts General Hospital in the United States. And the program began over-affiliated psychiatrists who were working with Cambodian refugees in the United States. And they began to notice the importance of a multidisciplinary approach for supporting this group of people. The folks from Cambodia had been through a very difficult wartime situation in their home country. And everyone that the Harvard team was working with had also through the refugee and migration process. So at first, what they noticed were the wide array of things that their Cambodian clients had lost.
Мгм.
Everything from culture to some elements of self-identity to a sense of safety and belonging. Most important moment of revelation came when they partnered with the Cambodian clients to design the clinic where they would receive services in Massachusetts, United States. The pieces that were most important to the clients were the physical space, the inclusion of plants, nature, animals, and also keeping room for Cambodian culture. And so over time, the HPRT, as this program is called, began to develop what's referred to as a global mental health response. And today, the program provides training to professionals around the world, as well as direct support for communities impacted by human-made disasters or natural disasters. We want to share with you the specific part of the model that's referred to as HEART. And Natalia, I don't know if you've acknowledged that the word heart has meaning in English, but
This is
great. Thank you. And again, HEART is the healing environment and restorative therapies approach. This model built off of Abraham Maslow's famous hierarchy of needs. At the base of the pyramid are our biological needs for survival, and as the pyramid goes up, we move more towards psychological, social, spiritual, and self-actualization needs. When the HPRT team was working with their Cambodian clients and thinking about Maslow's hierarchy, they began to see an important interpretation of that model. And the application of Maslow's hierarchy to working with folks who have experienced disasters became known as the H5 model. And H5, there are 5 pieces, each one, the words begin with H. So the first is health promotion. In this case, it's important to consider how we can attend to the physical and medical needs of people who have been impacted by disasters. And some aspects of that are obvious, but it's also important to evaluate each situation to answer the question of what are the health needs. The second component, more familiar pieces to our work, where we seek to support people engaging in spirituality, altruistic acts, work, meaningful work, and also self-care. The third component is to decrease humiliation. The HPRT team noted that one of the tactics of war is to humiliate and degrade the opponent. In response, we must consider how to help restore dignity. And one example could be community art projects that hold value, cultural value. But it's also important with the right people at the right time to create an opportunity for a person's story of the traumas they've experienced to be witnessed respectfully. And that one can be challenging and maybe not always, but as part of the overall approach to healing, witnessing the trauma story is important. A number of people who have worked with the HPRT have written their story. And some people, once they have gone through the process, have also published their stories. But that may be more of a long-term goal. The fourth consideration in this model is human rights. And sometimes this comes in the form of legal proceedings through courts after a war has ended. But seeking justice for human rights violations also helps to restore dignity. Something for us all to consider is whether there are any small ways that we can support justice and human rights day to day. The final component of this model is habitat or housing. We know that disasters oftentimes destroy physical spaces. We know that when people are displaced, where they end up, the environments are not always safe or comfortable. So in the long term, we seek to rebuild our communities and the physical structures that represent our community. T also found that there is a more immediate response that can support this goal. So we will focus on this element going forward. It's referred to as creating healing environments. In our application, we utilize art and creativity to help cultivate these healing environments. We've discussed engaging with creativity and nature can inspire hope and altruism. Richard Malik, the director and co-founder of the program, often says that there is no healing without. He is very fond of the role of that process. Literally being around nature can be healing, but also nature provides us with many helpful and healing metaphors. Dr. Malika has said that the chaos of trauma takes away the inner experience of coherence. So it is our job to help cultivate experiences of coherence. When I say it is our job, anyone in our community can play a part in this process. Maybe psychologists focus more on forming connections with the person witnessing their trauma story. Maybe teach focus on members of the government might help the community connect to the natural world. For example, buses or other programs that enable the community natural elements in. And any member of a community can support the community in terms of healthy connection. Another quote from Dr. Malika here. One way that we do this, according to the HPRT, is through this consideration of a recovery. And I acknowledge that we have two English versions here, so I apologize for that. Yeah. And then I can explain elements connected to our environment can help in the healing process. In some ways, this is a different explanation of what we've already said. On the bottom left-hand corner, we acknowledge the healing power of just being connected to nature. And on the one hand, being around pretty flowers can make you feel better, but also there is importance in having clean drinking water and fresh air to breathe. At the top of this diagram, we acknowledge the importance of environmental justice. In addition to seeking healing opportunities for the individual, we also need to create healthy spaces for the earth to regrow. And on the bottom right-hand corner, we acknowledge the importance of the physical environment people are in. Those are the places where we work, sleep, eat, and live. A colleague of mine often says, if I walk into a psychologist's office and I do not see any plants in the office, I will leave. The presence of nature, seeking justice and dignity for the natural world, and creating our built spaces in alignment with nature form so in a perfect world, we can ensure safety and spend a lot of money on making a beautiful building and garden. But this model was designed in very imperfect contexts. It outlines the ideal goals, but also acknowledges that we will not reach all of those goals fully. So the question is really, what can we do to make any improvements in the identified goal areas? With the resources that we have available to us, how can we increase a sense of peace or hope or upliftment, joy, reflection, etc.? In order to do this, it helps to define exactly what we mean by a healing environment. The first component is considering the physical space itself. How can we make a space beautiful, reflective of the culture, and welcoming? And we can start with just one flower in a pot or one drawing of a flower on the wall. When we have well-constructed environments, this can lead to increased participation, increased attendance, and better outcomes. And those can be treatment outcomes for patients, but it may also be academic outcomes or even just more psychological well. The third aspect is to cultivate uh, collaborative, positive, and empathic relationships between people who are in the helping role and the people who are receiving help. And when these first three pieces are in place, the Harvard team found that a fourth, almost placebo effect occurs in which additional senses of healing and value self-generate. So to create these four components, we have 5 points of focus. And each component involves some element of connection. First, we connect with ourselves through developing our understanding of our narrative identity. We also seek to build community in order to develop connections with, as we've already mentioned, developing literal or metaphoric connections to nature is also important. And as we've discussed in previous trainings, connection to hope and purpose. When these pieces are in place, we have the safe context in which we can share our story and have it witnessed. When we were planning this week's lesson, we noted a connection between what I just said and what Trish presented last week with Bronfenbrenner's model. So really, this H5 model is a more focused application of both Bronfenbrenner and Maslow's work. So lastly, today, we will leave you with some recommendations on how to create as healing of a physical environment as is realistically possible. What elements of the physical environment are stressful? And try to decrease them however you can. And in addition to connecting people with nature and animals, we also encourage an awareness of how those aspects of our lives can connect to spirituality. And different people will resonate more with one element of nature or spirituality than another element. And so utilize whatever is most useful. And one way to support the cultivation of dignity and safety is through providing options and choices for control. And this could be a very small thing, such as a vote on how to arrange chairs in a room. So in future conversations, we will continue to work together on how we can apply these concepts. But for the sake of time today, we will begin to bring this conversation to a close. We shall do so, as always, by ending with an activity of connection. I hope that as a part of this lecture, you see more fully why you prioritize activities of connection.